Why did you judge me?
You killed innocent people.
The means to an end.
You started a massacre.
I caused the revolution.
You betrayed the law.
Law! Gets me every time. After watching Karl Urban's Dredd, I just had to go back and rewatch the original version from 1995. And it's safe to say that this film is definitely one that divides opinion. Good old Sylvester Stallone took the reins here and headlined as the chisel-jawed bringer of justice. Now, I love me a good action film. I've seen practically all of Arnie, Stallone and Willis's films over the years, and you've sort of learnt what to expect by now going into them. And this is your typical Stallone action film. Explosions, heroics, cheesy scenes, you name it, they're all here. But one thing that you can count on more than the rest is the one-liners. And this film is full of them. You're shaking your head laughing when they're read out. A lot of them are really amusing. And it wouldn't surprise me if this film attributes to half of the one-liners that Stallone is known for. It really is chock full of them from start to finish. Now, I've never been a big reader of comics and such, so I don't have any reference to compare it to. But as I understand, the premise of this film is based upon past material. Everyone knows the story of the Dredd world by now. In a nutshell, dystopian future, massive megacities, and outside of the walls is the cursed earth. Now, as much as I prefer the most recent instalment of Dredd, this does do well to showcase the massive overpopulation problem that the megacities are suffering from. Street riots and block wars crop up every other day, and the current justice system just can't handle the amount of crime that just keeps rising and rising. Where the newer version of Dredd is set in a much more realistic world, this one is set far into the future. Accompanying Sly at the head of the roster is Diane Lane as Judge Hershey. She's the closest person Dredd's got to a friend, and she's there to counteract his harshness and strict enforcement of the law. She wants to know more about Dredd, and as to why he's so resolute in the punishments that he hands out. He doesn't believe in extenuated circumstances. If you save your own ass by breaking the law, you can bet that he's going to make you pay. Now, throughout most of the film, Dredd is accompanied by Fergie. Rob Schneider plays the comedy sidekick intended to bring in the laughs, but what Fergie brings is a lot of face palms. From what I've read, the majority of people feel that Fergie is just completely out of place, and I tend to agree with them. Him being foolish and attempting to be amusing just doesn't seem to fit right into this world. I'm interested to know, for those of you who have read the comics, how Fergie is written in there, if he's even there at all. Now, the opening 10 minutes are actually pretty entertaining. Dredd riding into the midst of a block war, showcasing the judge's special gun, the Lawgiver, and then dispatching those criminals with precise expertise. But it's not until Dredd is framed for murder when the main story begins to kick in. The obvious villain Judge Griffin helped to facilitate Dredd's prosecution, making sure without question that the council's verdict would be guilty. Jürgen Prochnow has a villain face, and I always remember him as the bad guy from Air Force One, so it came to no surprise to learn that he was the schemer behind it all. Just look at his face when he's screaming at Hershey, come on, and no one can spot this clear biasness? Great counsel you got there. Well, Griffin's weapon was Rico. Unbeknownst to Dredd, Rico was his brother, and he judged him, whom he only thought was his friend, a long time ago. Since then, he's been locked up in a maximum security penitentiary, and many had presumed him dead. Well, no longer. He was helped to escape prison, committed the murder that Dredd was falsely accused for, and then given the task to cause chaos throughout the megacity. He looked out when he found that massive killer robot though, as he programmed it to become a bodyguard for war. And all it took was 2 seconds to tweak the electronics. We learn that both Dredd and Rico are not normal, that they were both created from the DNA from the finest specimen of judges. And this was called Project Janus. Dredd was a resounding success, becoming an elite judge with all of the right properties. But something went wrong with Rico. He became a complete criminal instead, forcing the council to back down and then to lock and close the Janus files. Griffin tricked the current Chief Justice Fargo they always welcomed Max von Sydow into getting him to step down. It allowed Dredd to avoid the death penalty, so he was sentenced to life imprisonment. It was an elaborate plan set up by Griffin, I'll give him that, since both Dredd and Rico had the exact same DNA and none but a few were even aware about Project Janus in the first place. So Dredd stood no chance in his trial. Even he himself had no idea of his origins, later finding out that all the stories told to him about his family were all lies. So as Dredd was being shuffled off to prison, his ride was interrupted by the legendary Angel family, a group of cannibals who scavenge anything they can across the cursed earth. And they were something else. It's bad enough when you've got cannibals, but what the fuck is this guy? Half robot, half human? I don't know. All that matters is that he was there to propel the plot along. He mortally wounded the former Chief Justice, who arrived just in the nick of time to save Dredd from some of Griffin's men. But before he took his last breath, Fargo told Dredd everything, and it spurred him on to find his way back into the megacity and to stop his brother for good. Rico himself at the time was just destroying the foundations of power. 108 judges murdered in 48 hours pressured the council into reopening the forgotten Janus files. Technology had advanced now, so fully grown clones could be created in just 8 hours, refilling the massive losses taken within a day. It didn't matter either way in what the council decided in the end, because all what Griffin wanted was to just get those files open, as Rico waltzed in and murdered the rest of the council just as Dredd arrived back home. It was inevitable Griffin was always going to get stabbed in the back. There was just no way of ever keeping Rico on a leash. He did whatever he wanted. And after he ruined Griffin's plan to have a clone army at his disposal by replacing the Council of Judges' DNA with that of his own, he realised what a madman he was dealing with. And Rico sentenced him to the worst death in the film, no question. But he did deserve it. So then it was Dredd versus Rico. The final showdown between the two brothers took place first in the cloning lab and finally in the Statue of Liberty. Because why not, yeah? And as Rico stood victorious over Dredd, it wasn't a monologue which is usually the villain's downfall. This time, he was out of ammo. Damn, Fergie really does bring Dredd some luck.
Court's adjourned.
So, to the overall verdict. Like I say, I love an old school action film, and I do enjoy this movie. It's a guilty pleasure of mine. I know it's not anywhere near the heights to a great film, but I like it nonetheless, which is why I am going to give it a 6 out of 10. It's slightly above average in my opinion, but again, I do like action films, and I like a typical Stallone action film. If you don't enjoy action films as much as me, perhaps it's around a 5 out of 10. It's a fun movie, there's enough action throughout the film to keep it entertaining, and its swift movement between scenes, never spending too long in one location, is one of the film's strongest points. You can't deny Stallone fits the figure for Dredd, he just looks the part. He's got the jaw, he's got the physique, and he's got the presence. It's only that this film makes a big decision which a lot of people disagree with. And in contrast as to how Karl Urban's Dredd was received, you have to say here that they got it wrong. And that is the removal of Dredd's helmet. He had it off probably more than he had it on in the film. And with him having it off, it just takes away his aura, his mystique, and makes him seem much more human. He's supposed to be an unforgiving judge, but him having it off just makes him seem more exposed. His one-liners are forgivable, given that it's something that you come to expect from Stallone's roles, but the character overall just didn't feel right. He was treated too perfectly and too much like a hero, proven at the end here when the crowd are all cheering for him as he's riding off into the sunset. They needed to tone that down drastically and make him more of a feared presence like he's supposed to be, even among his peers. But that just wasn't the way that the filmmakers went. Fergie's foolishness proved that, with his comedy just a complete mismatch for this sort of world. Altogether though, it is an enjoyable action flick, but it has its limits. Depending on how you like this sort of film, it might get old very quickly, But if you're like me, it's something that when nothing else is on the television, you'll quite happily sit down and watch it. Let me know your thoughts about the film, about Fergie and Stallone's portrayal down in the comments. And as always, thank you very much for watching. Please leave a like, comment and subscribe if you enjoyed the review. And I'll see you on the next one.
Let me guess. Life. Ah!